Welcome, everybody, to Radicalized, where truth survives and we always have your back. We are on episode 60. They said it couldn't be done under heavy troll fire. We just keep going, and we hit the big 6-0. So congratulations, gentlemen.
Hello.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's good.
60. Here we go.
Thank you to everybody who has stuck with us from the beginning. We are so indebted for your support, your kind words, all your great ideas. We have a very, very, very wonderful show. We are going to be encouraging our friends to send this particular episode to the Trump supporters in their lives. This is our huge olive branch to them because we are going to be talking about Trump cult defectors who had the courage to step out of Trumpism and had the courage to make some serious life changes. And we're going to be having that conversation with Melissa Jo Peltier. She's a filmmaker and activist and a really lovely human being. And she put together a documentary called The Game Is Up, where she interviewed many former members of the Trump cult who had their own awakening and realized that they had been conned. And she in a beautiful way, using what she calls soft persuasion, gave people the opportunity to tell their stories. And we're going to be talking a bit about soft persuasion in this episode. Anything else, or should we dive in?
Let's go. I would just like to point out that the best thing about this movie is that two of the stories in it come from an Ohio farmer, and nobody tells stories like Ohio farmers, let me tell you.
We also, Melissa, who has lots of experience as a producer, this was her first real full-length documentary. We also just have to give a shout out to Chunk. OMG, you guys are going to see some animation by somebody who apparently is not even an animator full-time, a hobbyist. He's a genius, no question. You guys see his work on the 5/8 all the time, but wow. All right, let's do this.
Front loaded.
So RadPod is blessed to have some really brilliant friends, and you guys will know Wes Clark Jr. from a few episodes ago, the subject of American PSYOP. He coined the phrase retrograde dipshits. So for Front Loaded today, I am going to be opening with some quotes from friends of RadPod. Here it is. He is responding in this quote to Dave Troy's thread, and he says, and I quote, "It's an oligarch insurgency riding on a wave of malcontents, religious zealots, incels, racists, and other retrograde dipshits who operate under the mistaken belief that the very people responsible for the present dystopia will somehow fix everything if they have unchecked power."
I don't know. That's a mic drop. That's
yeah. Like, how do you even? You can't make that better. You can't.
That's it.
That is the miciest of the mic drops ever. And in Wes's, Wes is a writer. He is one of the tribes of writers. But man, I want the T-shirt, the tattoo. I want to start a band called Retrograde. I want to start a band called Retrograde Dipshits. Maybe that's what we are. I don't know. But dude, right? Come on.
I have to admit, I would wear that on a hoodie everywhere.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want the socks, the boxers.
Hey, Wes, I'll set it up if we can share licensing or something.
Not that they're all retrograde dipshits, right? Or if they are retrograde dipshits, maybe they can de-retrograde themselves. I just wanted to say that because the theme of our show is being a warm place where the Trump supporter in your life can get some information. So we're not saying you're a retrograde dipshit, the person watching, because since you're watching, you have an open mind.
And we are going to be talking about that very point that Jim just made. And again, in Wes's defense, he said other retrograde dipshits. He was possibly othering retrograde dipshits.
There's nothing, Wes doesn't need defending. That was 1,000%.
Well, if people really want to complain about it, they can go back and watch the entire episode, get it in context, right?
Yeah,
That, and
watch
I'm
our
just trying to
episode.
drive our viewership numbers up. Anyway.
Sure. Yeah, actually, now that Jim is back on the tweeters, it's interesting because when Jim was troll brigaded inauthentically off of Twitter, it really hurt our show and it hurt our numbers. It hurt everything. With him back on, everything's spiking back up. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But yes, Wes's interview was quite brilliant, seen by over 1,000 people globally. And for us, that's a pretty big deal. So if you missed Rad Pod and Chill on Thursday night, we gave a shout out to a NYU journalism instructor named Jay Rosen, who tweeted this line: "Clown car hearings exploit a weakness in mainstream journalism's source code, which gives no clear instructions for how to report truthfully on events that are themselves false, meaning they spring from a propagandist intent, and taking them seriously only furthers the scam." Those of you who read my Betty Dangerous Substack know that one of the themes that I'm continually working on is what the failings of the Fourth Estate have been in the last 7 years and what we can do better. One of the things that we can do better is get that quote on a t-shirt as well, because he basically is summing up that you don't parrot propaganda without becoming part of the problem and furthering the scam. So I think that's a very important point.
Well, yes, we will revisit this topic in Hellscape.
Oh, how fantastic. A very, very nice tease. Yes. So we have to figure out where we go from here.
You know, there were the two things about this hearing. And the first one was a talking point, but also a point of data that I don't think enough people absorbed. And that was when Jamie Raskin received an answer concerning Russian accounts on the platform that are active. The second thing is, knowing the history of all the people we have in this picture here, it's hard pressed for me to believe everything that comes out of all of their mouths except Miss Navaroli. She did an excellent job at the January 6th committee.
Mm-hmm.
And but what I know of the history of some of these other individuals casts their testimony in doubt.
As he noted, the clown car hearings do exploit a weakness in journalism source code, and we are unfortunately going to be seeing a lot more of that exploitation of the source code in months to come.
Until we stop it, until we, figure out that, that propaganda and psyops are real and they are in the process of destroying our country. And, for that matter, global civilization, but, current present danger is American democracy.
Yes, and we will be determining, complicit or negligent, both. We need to do better. So, couple quick points. I am trying very much to do my part at my Betty Dangerous Substack. I have a Fight Fascism toolkit that I've been doing a series on. And one of the things I did last night was reviewed threads of mine from the last, since 2019. And as I was piecing the threads together and plucking some of them out that focused on the evidence behind the Trump-Russia cabal, really, it did occur to me that there is so much evidence. I'm more certain than ever that the traitors will eventually devour each other. Now, we're going to talk about that with Melissa Jo Peltier coming up, because her concern is they devour the good people first. And once the good people are devoured, then they devour each other. But I do believe that there's just, in total, there's just too much evidence for the our justice system to ignore it entirely. It just can't happen. Whether it's going to be Georgia, whatever it's going to be, a change is going to come. I hope it's in time. Jim?
Yeah, don't get me started on the justice system right now.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, we're going to revisit it. We're going to revisit it.
A major problem. We have a justice system that still operates on 18th century time. And we have criminals that operate on 21st century time, and that is a problem.
Right. High five.
Well, it's what we are experiencing is a problem of conflicting realities, right? And the reality that is real involves all these, well, psychological operations. It's such a list of things to go down.
This is the part of the show where we ask our leader, our fearless leader, Joe Biden, to announce the cognitive war that we are in so we can have the resources to fight it, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to do that every episode, so get used to it, kids. So last point for front loaded is I want to introduce a new word, which I just learned from fascism scholar Ruth Ben-Ghiat. This is my Ruth Ben-Ghiat moment of every episode. Rehumanization. Rehumanization. Just as authoritarians work to dehumanize people for their power grabs, it's our job as a sane majority to rehumanize people. That's going to be a theme today with Melissa and her film, The Game Is Up. We're going to invite her to talk about her experience interviewing former Trump supporters as they tell their very human stories. If you are a Trump supporter who is kind of in knots as you go to sleep at night and you're watching the show now, just know that we are here to share stories about people who felt just the same way that you did. And we're going to work on rehumanizing.
Fascism always requires dehumanization, right? Because in order to create the hate that you need in order to seize power, illegally, which is what fascists do, you have to generate hate. And the easiest way to do that is find a scapegoat, find the Jews, find, whatever the most convenient
immigrants,
and
China,
create an outgroup, and
right.
So that is why dehumanization is so dangerous, and why we can't act the way that they do, because we end up in a very, very bad place.
That is right. And we are going to be rehumanizing for the next hour. So join us, please.
All right. Moving on to word phrase of the week. Since we need words to explain what's going on, I've chosen this week to bring up cognitive warfare.
Right on.
As you can see, cognitive warfare, functionally defined, it's the weaponization of public opinion by an external entity to do what you see here: influence public and governmental policy and destabilize public institutions like, school boards.
Oh, dude.
Boards of elections.
Our 2016
Congress,
election.
where there's a bunch of clowns running around, as we said.
Dudes.
Here's the problem, right? Here's the problem is there's even a paper out here that I think, if our audience is interested, they should read. NATO gets it.
Yeah.
How come our own government doesn't get it?
I'm a little bit raw, hi-fi, because last night I reread my 90-plus tweet thread on the Mueller report where I broke it down in bite-sized pieces. Cognitive warfare was waged against our country to throw the outcome of an election. And it worked. It worked. It worked. And there was Trump and there was Manafort, all complicit, right? Working with the Russians, no question, certainly not opposing them. And then the war fighting thread with Keir Giles, which breaks down step by step how they waged the war against us. And it continues. So, yeah.
Look, these people are waging psychological war against American citizens all day long. You can call it cognitive war, you can call it psychological war, whatever you want. It's weaponizing people's minds with this gap that we have between the capabilities that the bad guys have and the capabilities the good guys have to protect us from what they're able to do. Yeah. So we'll talk about that more.
All right. So why does it matter, Hi-Fi?
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? By High Fidelity.
First story this week. Too big to punish. Facebook hit with $1 million fine tied to user privacy lawsuit. Now, the lawsuit itself is, well, it should interest everyone in this country, considering, Cambridge Analytica and Palantir stealing all of our data for psychological profiling, psychographic profiling, I should say. And because Facebook in this court case has been dragging their feet and, taking their time producing evidentiary documents and things like that, the judge said, I'm going to fine you the most I can, which is basically $1 million. And he even acknowledges in his opinion on the fine that he knows it's pocket change for them. I would like to point out to our audience that $1 million is roughly 3 to 5 minutes of Facebook's generated revenue. So, yeah, good job, Judge. You cost them 3 to 5 minutes. And Facebook will continue its malevolence in our society until such time as real action is taken, which it still has not been taken at all.
$1 million is like that $1 that people get fined sometimes in civil cases. Like, oh yeah, you're guilty, but whatever, we're gonna fine you $1 to, but whatever. Like it's like that. It's embarrassing and a fucking, the way we allow these companies to put in their business model these little fines. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to get some parking tickets while we rob the bank. Okay, we could probably handle that as long as we are successful in robbing the bank. It's just pathetic. And
I just want to read tweet number 30 from my Greed, Corruption, and Fear thread from August 2nd, 2019, A Tale of Two Men, where I was talking about Robert Mercer and Vladimir Putin and the ties that they shared long before Dave Troy and I wrote about the network and the Kremlin ties and the extremist GOP ties. Data accessed. Facebook data gathered by Cambridge Analytica was accessed from Russia. So is it possible Russians learned from Cambridge Analytica and used that knowledge to run ads during the 2016 presidential election? That came from MP Damian Collins from England.
Yes. I mean, we know they did. I mean, they paid for some of them in fucking rubles. They literally did. So, anyway.
I'm just, this whole thing, when we talk about social media, and there's actually a part in Melissa's movie, which again, you got to watch it, where they talk about social media and how it was specifically designed to be addictive. I would add the one part they miss is it was also designed to manipulate people towards radicalization.
Yeah, social media is a made up euphemism for rage machines, right? That's what they're for. The fucking algorithm from the beginning is there to make you mad because when you get mad, you get more turned up about it. It's just human psychology. So they figured that out, and they just kept that going until everybody got so mad at each other that we're almost at fucking civil war. So that's how that works.
Yeah, which we just
it's learned not social.
Recently.
There's nothing fucking social about it. It is weapons.
I think you said it best, Jim, when you said anti-social media is probably a better way to phrase it.
It really is. It's designed to divide people, not to create communities.
I'm sticking.
That communities haven't been created on it, despite that.
Yes, look at us.
But they what happens is those communities form, and then another one forms a different thing, and then they fight each other like this. And on the border of that fight is where all the ratings come, right? And sadly, the border of that fight is now all the way at Nazis, so that's bad.
I'm sticking with the $44 billion psyop canon. I mean, that's just
that's still the best possible first one. There's no better.
Yeah, as soon as people understand it as that, maybe they'll see exactly what it is.
All right.
All right. So next story.
I'm getting messages from Melissa saying, love, love, love you guys. And since this is our Valentine's episode, we just love you right back, girl. We're about to introduce you to our friends here. Okay. So what else?
You know, one thing I forgot to mention about, Facebook and Meta, who was, on their board of executives,
is this one of those moments?
Well, yes, that would be Mr. Peter T.
Oh, hi. Thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
Had to. I know it's driving Jim nuts. He's like, God damn it, love.
No, you can do that. You can do that as many times. I'm serious. You can do that as many times as you want.
It's not too morning zoo for Jim at the moment.
No, I think it's funny because
I think it's perfect. It's perfect for him.
Let's just hope that he is one of those who gets devoured, because the trail of evil slime left behind is it's really hurting the world.
The good news is he doesn't look that great. I don't know if you saw my thread where
I did.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what I really liked? I really liked there are devout Christians calling him out now on his blasphemy, and that makes me happy to see.
More of that, please.
Yes.
Join us, friends. Join us. Come, join us.
Yeah. Next story. All your power are belong to us. And this story it's kind of a number of stories, but I'd like to start with Ohio, because Ohio is the heart of it all, after all.
This is our Ohio moment.
Our Ohio moment, yes. OHIO. Don't forget it. First Energy exec tried to keep DeWine Aid's name off of $10 million transaction. If you're unfamiliar with the First Energy scandal, it involves $61 million in dark money funneled through a 501c4 organization run by our on trial Speaker of the House, householder. But what I really want to point out is it's an energy company that is using slush fund money to funnel into politics, to control the narrative and control the laws that are made in states to the detriment of the residents of that state. And I think this is huge. But I also need to point out that the Florida Power and Light CEO recently stepped down because they were funneling money into ghost candidates in Florida, in which one candidate lost by only like 6 votes, except there was another ghost candidate. They shared the last name Rodriguez. And there's also, there's a private intelligence company who's running operations for them I
remember this story.
I just want to clarify. Are you saying that there's corruption in Florida politics?
And Ohio politics, and let's not leave out Alabama Power, who paid millions to a shadowy consulting group.
That's my next band, Retrograde Dipshits and Alabama Power.
I just want to run a shadowy consulting group. Shit.
Yeah.
So what I love about this particular story block here is they can't pass anything by hi-fi. He's going to catch it all. He's going to catch it all. He's going to see the network. He's going to see the power energy grids, meddling in politics. Does anybody remember Enron? Have we learned fucking nothing?
Yes. You know who was one of the primary defense lawyers for Enron?
Sidney Powell.
Yes.
Ding, ding.
Let's get even.
I hate to not General. Whatever. Flynn's fucking lawyer who got him off from all of his crime.
I would like to point out a couple data points.
Which you paid for with you and my money. Sorry.
I would like to point out some data points to our audience. There was a reason that Donald Trump, when he said, I could just call up a corporation and ask for $26.1 million, and he mentioned ExxonMobil. When you look at only the actions of Chevron, in a number of cases involving South America to see the corruption there. And then let's go international and let's talk about Gazprom, shall we?
Now he's just showing off.
All right, I'll stop. But basically, what I'm saying is all your power belong to us, and that's why it matters. How was that for a segue? You like that?
It was great. High five.
All right, moving on.
Man.
Final story this week. WTF FBI. This story comes to us from Colorado. And what it involves is a felon who was violent, infiltrating the Black Lives Matter movement in Denver, Colorado, and urging people to get into guns and purchase guns, and ultimately an activist who did arrange a purchase of a firearm through him is now facing felony charges himself. It just, with everything that's going on with the FBI lately, I think we need to acknowledge the targeting of, shall we say, left political groups by the FBI. And we should also acknowledge their failure when it comes to white supremacy, Christian nationalism, extremism on the right. And that's why it matters.
Ooh.
Well, yes. I mean, Chris Wray was put in there by Trump. Donald Trump wasn't going to put somebody in there who's going to be fair in there, which is why Antifa and BLM were the most investigated thing during the Trump years. It's why January 6th, oh, sorry, we had no idea, even though my friends and I were telling you for fucking weeks beforehand, right? How could we possibly know I was going to? So yes, not the FBI, I'm not saying is a corrupt institution. I'm not even saying that Chris Wray is some kind of op, but Chris Wray is not a biased person unbiased person who is aggressively going after criminals. He admitted that under Trump, all he was doing was looking at was was Chinese intelligence and nothing else, right? Why the fuck was that? I wonder, right?
Because that's
why we need to take a very, very serious look at the whole FBI, but mainly we got to get the fuck rid of Chris Wray and put somebody in there who actually cares about bringing people to justice.
Word.
Well, I would also argue at this point in time that perhaps we need a superseding police force of the police to guarantee that, certain ethical and moral boundaries aren't being crossed.
Yeah, I mean, they had an anti-fascist police force in Germany.
That's where I was going.
That first of all, we have to. The reason why they've been going after Antifa for so long is because they want to make it libtard to be against fascism. That's the point. That's the whole lot. Here's Antifa, anti-fascists, right? So let's attack this little name here and make it unfashionable to be against Nazis. That's what we're doing here.
So I worked for an FBI director who was the most lovely L7 upright human being I know. And again, when we talk about this stuff, I'm hearing Rage Against the Machine in my head, some of those who work, forces. So I think it's very important, as Jim noted, that we are talking about the infection within our intelligence agencies. We're talking about the infection within law enforcement. We have friends of this show who write us letters about the QAnon infection within their own sheriff's department. So to Hi-Fi's point, we need policing of the police for our democracy to survive unscathed during this period of time. Absolutely. And we need truth and reconciliation about what happened in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I just like an answer to WTF, FBI.
All right, then. Hellscape.
Jim Stewartson's Hellscape. Oh, fuck.
Hello. So we've been talking about the fact that our administration and our press will not acknowledge what's right in front of all of us, right? There's a gap between what is reported on and talked about and what we actually experience, right? And that is a big problem because it's creating an alternate reality, right? It's creating a different world in which magically all of our relatives are getting sucked into some weird fascist cult, right? That's not, that is a recipe for destroying a society, because you're putting in everyone's mind a gap between what they know and feel is true and what people are admitting. We talked about cognitive warfare before. Cognitive warfare is a fancy term for using everything you can, everything in your power non-kinetically, to change people's minds, right? And that's an important phrase, change people's minds, right? Because you can do that with argument, you can do that with persuasion. As Melissa will tell us, you can do it with soft persuasion, right? But in cognitive warfare, you are getting your mind changed involuntarily. That is an attack. It has been described before as menticide, as the killing of the mind, as mind rape. And I'm sorry to use that term, but a foreign force is inflicting ideas into your head, inflicting ideas, not presenting them for you to decide, implanting them by coercive propaganda that we see every goddamn day on Twitter. Every day, especially since Elon Musk decided to let all the Nazis back on, right? Because of free speech. That's bullshit. The reason why he let them back on is because he knows that in the overall scheme of things, it will destabilize us. Because that anger, those ideas, that vortex of hate that pulls people in, it's just bigger and bigger and bigger. And we can see the vortex. We're all looking at it. It's like we're, in fucking Oklahoma and there's a tornado, right? And the government's like, I don't know, seems kind of rainy, right? You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? There is a tornado. We need to start being honest with the American people. We need to trust the American people with the ability to process the information that they already know. No one is surprised by this. Once you explain it to them, it happens to me constantly. People are like, oh shit, okay, now that makes perfect sense. Right? That there's an intentional operation to change your mind. Hiding the explanation for that is indefensible. Because there are, every single person in the country now knows somebody who has been stolen, who has been taken from them. A casualty. They are missing in action. Right? They're still in there somewhere, but in the meantime, they're talking about Biden and the fucking vaccine genocide and whatever else, right? They were stolen from you. They were stolen from you through a psychological warfare attack. And we need to start telling people the truth. Bad people did bad things to make your loved one hurt. They were harmed by an enemy nation and by traitors inside the United States, which are helping them. We need to start being honest about a few things. We are at war. The war is primarily psychological, although it will not be that way forever. Mike Flynn is building paramilitaries and infiltrating law enforcement and infiltrating the FBI, as we've seen, and infiltrating. We cannot afford to allow that to continue and not tell people, not warn people that it's happening. Because then it just happens. I see people get picked off all the time. I've been doing this for 2.5 years, and I don't know how many people I've seen get pulled off into some batshit world because the vortex just came by and swept them right up. They're in front of me. Like, there goes another one. We got to start telling people why that is, how that's happening, how they can defend themselves, that this is a psychological war, that these are psychological operations. PSYOPs are real. It's not made up. It's been part of war forever, since there has been war. Arguably, war is mostly psychological. The kinetic part is the last step. Preparing the battlefield is what all generals do. And that's what Mike Flynn and his allies in America, what Putin is doing in his own country, that is happening. And if we don't start telling people it's happening, it's just going to succeed. So here's my request to our viewers. Don't be afraid to use the right words, right? Don't be afraid to say, hey, this is a Kremlin psyop. If it's doing the business of Putin, right? If it's benefiting Putin, you can almost guarantee it is based on Kremlin propaganda or coming from a Kremlin operative. It's real. They're everywhere. You see them now, right? The Taibis and the Pasovics. I mean, for fuck's sake. All they do are things to benefit Vladimir Putin. 100% of the time. So what does that make them? We have to start calling these people out. We have to start saying these are enemy combatants. Like letting a bunch of serial killers run around in your society and not warn people about it. So please start using these words. Don't be afraid to say that Putin is waging psychological war on the United States and we want it to stop. And don't be afraid to use words like psyops. Be careful with how you use them. Make sure when you're using them, you know what they mean, right? But learn. Do not be afraid to understand what's happening to us, to tell other people what's happening to us, and to demand that our authorities tell us. Yeah, for fuck's sake, arrest Mike Flynn.
Yeah, so as I'm listening to Jim's hellscape, all I'm thinking is we have not been acknowledging the casualties of war. We have been living through menticide. Thank you for introducing that word. It's very important that we acknowledge the people that we lost, those people who you were talking about, not in Kansas anymore. That is, those are casualties of war. And so what we're going to do now in our rehumanization efforts and our soft persuasion efforts, we are going to be introducing our new guest for this episode 60, Melissa Jo Peltier. She's won multiple Emmys as a writer, producer, director. Her film, The Game Is Up, is absolutely so important and so beautiful because it humanizes former Trump supporters and gives them the space to tell their stories. Let's watch the trailer.
When you're in the conservative media world like I was in, you are told to say every day that Donald Trump walks on water. I was told by my bosses to only say good things about Donald Trump. I told them to go.
Most of our opinions about Donald Trump do not come from CNN or from MSNBC or from Fox. Most of our opinions about Donald Trump come from Donald Trump himself.
People say, oh, I should get over it, I should move on, but it's like, how can you? I mean, they lied about liberals, lied about Democrats, lied about Trump. It's kind of hard to just move on.
Lock her up. I know quite a few people my age who are in the Republican Party who they're thinking about leaving the Republican Party. They're thinking about leaving this Trumpism, this phenomenon.
I threw up the red flag, I threw up the white flag as a warning that this was bad agricultural policy and it was going to hurt us for a long time.
Okay, Melissa Jo Peltier, I'm so happy to see your lovely face and your beautiful, beautiful background, room rater like 10 or 12 or 11 or whatever they do. You've not only been, an incredible warrior in the real resistance for many years, you've also been a really kind, safe place. Like whenever I have interactions with you in this horrible shit show known as kind of the Twitter activism world, you've always been so kind. So I just wanted to say thank you, because it's been a lot of trauma. So you are quite an epically award-winning producer and obviously documentary filmmaker. And please give our viewers a snapshot of your background and why it was so important to direct The Game Is Up.
Well, I come from many, many, many years in the trenches of nonfiction television, some dramatic television, but mostly nonfiction. And I found myself transitioning out of that the deeper we got into reality TV, which I think is a big part of the whole issue that nobody even pays attention to, and it's like a subtext. But I do. Yeah, so Trump got elected, and I actually interviewed Trump in 1999 at Mar-a-Lago, and it was the first year he'd been dating Melania. And I realize now, looking back, because he took us out to his golf course and he had paid for it in cash. He was very, very big about saying that. We just bought this in cash. And this was like right after his bankruptcies, and he sort of vanished for a while. And that was sort of odd. But now I realize that must have been when the Russians started to give him money. Yeah. Right around the start, right then. But I found him, he was actually quite gracious to us. And he was, he hadn't been behind the camera in a long time, and we had something he wanted, which was attention. But what I noticed about him, the first thing I noticed was that he was probably the most needy, kind of pathetically needy person I'd ever met. I mean, and I'm talking about actors. I've worked with a lot of actors, and they were nothing compared to him. I mean, he was really the easiest person to sort of manipulate with flattery that I'd ever met. And it was
Boom.
embarrassing. And I mean, not only that, of course, I followed him during the abortion years, the Obama years where he was, the whole birther thing, which was outrageous. Right. And so I had the feeling though that he could get elected. I really did.
Yeah. Because
my husband and I both have a lot of family who are sort of at that mindset. And so he got elected, and I wasn't shocked. I was devastated.
Yeah.
And that's sort of when I got more active on Twitter. I'd never been active on Twitter politically I used to just write, more career kind of stuff on Twitter. Yeah. So the first basically 3 years of his administration, I spent like stressed out, trying to do something. And like so many of us, we were on that Mueller's going to save us train, and then, and once that started, the first impeachment, was it the first? Yeah, the first, of course, how many impeachments are there? The first one was undergoing, we were going through that then. And I did not think he was going to get impeached. By this point, I realized that, the party was behind him 100%. But I didn't think that the Republicans would act like such little brats in the Senate trial, which is supposed to be a really solemn thing. And even with Clinton, it was. Yeah. And, with John Roberts sitting there like a potted plant and the guys walking in and out and reading and texting. And I was just so appalled at this. And I thought, they have a confidence that really scares me. And if I don't do something to make a difference, I will never live with myself. And so I figured, I have this 35-year background and skill set. And so Mary Carey Craven and I had told her this idea that I'd had a couple of years ago, which was about doing something on people who had left Trump and why. People who had made the logical conclusions that Joe Walsh did. Mm-hmm. I thought he would be like a canary in the coal mine, and he was not. It really surprised me because when Joe Walsh started coming out against him, I'm like, okay, that's it. Everyone's going to follow. Mm-hmm. And it was shocking to me that even, super moderate Republicans were not following. Mm-hmm. And so we had talked about it a lot. And one of the things that I can't do well is raise money. I mean, I can do pretty much anything else in the business, but raise money. I'm terrible at it. I can't ask.
That's always the hardest trick. That is the hardest trick.
I'm just, I'm an old Yankee, and I just feel like asking for money is just crass. I don't know how that, but I didn't have any money to do it with. And Mary figured we could start a PAC. She'd done some work with Mad Dog PAC, and that we could maybe raise money that way. But it was sort of like do it or die. This was January 2020. Mm-hmm. And so we said, let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Perfect timing, right before the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah. And that was a big problem of it because, we got started. We shot Joe Walsh. He was running for president at the point in Iowa and New Hampshire. And we're getting ready to go out with Chris Gibbs in Ohio, and everything shut down. And, nobody, if you remember, nobody knew anything. We didn't know like how deadly it was, how contagious. Nobody knew it was airborne or was it not airborne and we, for a while, we were kind of paralyzed. Like, what do we do? We had this great coverage of Joe and this great video already in the can. And we sort of bided our time and tried to raise money, and it got harder to raise money because everyone was putting their money into, PPE for PPP for hospitals that didn't have it, which is a good place to put your money. I understand that. But so what we finally did was we kind of buckled down and said, look, we don't know when we're getting out of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to find virtual ways to do this. And so we actually shot probably 80% of the documentary virtually.
Wow, you can't tell. Brilliant. Can't tell. Amazing.
I was totally against it for the longest time because I'm just, again, I'm like really old school. And part of you know, what I love about doing documentaries is you go into another world and you meet people and you see things and you notice things and you have your inspirations there when you're on the ground, and that wasn't going to happen. But I mean, it didn't happen so much on this, but it did happen because we did really extensive pre-interviews.
Yeah.
So we kind of got to know the people, you know, via Zoom pretty well.
I'm a director and a producer. Jim clearly has made his film. And so from a director's point of view and a producer's point of view, well freaking done. What I love so much about Game Is Up is that you as a storyteller and as a director got out of people's way and respectfully and graciously let them tell their story and their truths without the usual kind of manipulation that people often engage in order to, you know, fulfill whatever agenda they have.
Right.
I love the honesty and integrity of it, and it made me love all these people. People who I would not have necessarily celebrated or cherished before. I do. The young Republican girl, the super religious couple, you know, the farmer. Like, I care about all these people. But more than anything, I'm so grateful that they had the courage to step up and get out of the Trumpist cult. And I think that's the message that I hope will reach, you know, the masses who are still in the cult.
Well, that was why I wanted to give people permission to leave, because, you know, people who are in those environments are only talking to other people in those environments. And for all they know, everyone else in their world could have doubts, but none of them will admit it. Wow. It's just like Scientology, you know, so until they all sit down and start comparing notes, which they won't do, they're not going to do it. And I just figured there's probably a lot of people going to bed with knots in their stomach over stuff he's doing, but they're just sucking it up because everyone else is saying he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And maybe if they see somebody changing their mind, if they identify with something that person said, that will at least open a crack for them to start looking in a more critical way. And I recently heard that 2 people that somebody showed it to did change. And they changed it because of Chris Gibbs, because they saw themselves in that, you know, old American farm tradition. And his work really made a difference. And that made me really happy. I'm sure there's more who have changed, or more who have at least it's opened their minds. But, you know, I need it to be seen by more people.
It's already worth it, though. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And that one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. It'll have the ripple effect. It'll affect their families. Jim, go ahead.
Did you find, because I think giving people hope that there is a way out for their loved ones in the 30% of America that's like this, that's been, you know, pulled into this. Did you find there was a common sort of trigger or moment or key or something like that to between these people? You know, I know they all have different stories about how they kind of found their way out of it. I'm just wondering if there's if you found any kind of common trigger. For me, and I've talked to a lot, there seems to be a moment for people where things just kind of cascade.
Right.
But I don't know if you found that as well.
Well, you know, I just happened to study cults for many, many years. I started studying them for a specific project probably 20 years ago and just got down the rabbit hole. So I've been studying them a long time, and I had read a lot of Stephen Hassan, and that's why I got him for this, because when he wrote Cult of Trump, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. And there's all sorts of ways people get out of cults, but usually it's isolating them a little bit from the group, and something hits them personally that kind of opens a crack. And if they miss the opportunity to drown that out with, like, you know, in cults they call it
thought-stopping phrases.
Thank you. Yes, thought-stopping. And, you know, everything, all the MAGA slogans, all of those are cult thought-stopping.
Yeah. Right.
You know, libtard and all that stuff. All that is part of it. You just, when you hear something you don't want to hear, you just shut it out with what you know, and you memorized. And if you're away from that long enough, and I think what happened with each one of them is something happened that personally affected them.
Yes.
And that's what did it. And then they started looking at the bigger picture. But
I would love to take this moment to show the Ron Hawthorne clip for our viewers, because I think first of all, I can't listen or watch him without crying. He is so beautiful and his heart is so genuine, and he and his wife. But also, I think it's him I think what his message is the one that could resonate with millions of people in America.
I was sitting in the break room with a coworker of mine, and I like to talk about God. I'm one who likes to share my experiences with God. And he asked me, well, why would I want to be a Christian when you guys support such a horrible human being? I was just taken back. It stunned me, it stopped me. I didn't know what to say. I found it hard that day to concentrate on work because it's like a knife going right through your heart for me to have to face that. And that's how God works on us, you know. He makes us face the things that, where we have shortcomings and the things he wants to change inside of us. And then I was reading the Bible and reading some scripture, and and some verses jumped out at me. And I read this. There are 6 things which the Lord hates, yes, 7 which are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who utters lies, and one who spreads strife among brothers. And it was just like, boom, there it is. It's the exact opposite of who Christ was. And that really stuck me. I knew.
Wow.
I want to take that clip and figure out how to make it go ridiculous's viral.
Yeah, me
you know
too.
What I mean? I feel like because he's saying something super important and he's doing something, he's interpreting the Bible in the way it's actually meant to be interpreted, right. As opposed to the backwards world that a lot of the Christo-fascists do. Yeah. And so I just love that clip so much.
Me too. And also the fact that he sought help from his pastor when he was struggling about not wanting to vote for him. And his pastor used that, imperfect vessel line. We need the judges. We need the taxes. So you got God uses these imperfect vessels. High five.
Right.
And actually, that's one thing I wanted to ask you about. He says his pastor used the story of Cyrus to convince him to vote for Donald Trump. However, I would argue if one truly knew the history of Cyrus the Great, they would know that he was one of the first rulers in the history of the world to ensconce human rights into law. How can you justify that with a man who obviously wants to remove human rights from people? He's anti-LGBTQ, he's anti-immigrant, he's anti-women's rights. Do you feel like they're being preyed upon?
They don't even know what the story is. The thing about evangelical Christianity and a lot of religion is, and I've just recently been reading a lot about the Puritans, who are my people, and interesting. There's a lot of dichotomies in their beliefs, and a lot of that comes from just this ingrained belief of Christianity as, it's the traditional hierarchy, father, mother, king, prince, it's traditional hierarchies that we've always followed. And we still follow them, but we follow them supposedly in a voluntary way. It's not like some guy's just born and suddenly they can tell us what to wear. It's like, we decide. Ostensibly, we're supposed to be able to decide that the majority of us would like to wear black. So we'll all wear black because we voted it in. Or the majority of us would like to wear different colors because we all wrote into our little voting booth different colors. And so the person who's in charge says, well, I have to look at this. I think we're going with the majority. That's what it's supposed to be. But evangelical churches still run on this sort of image that your pastor is all knowing, that there's a middleman between God and you, and that's the pastor.
Yeah.
And it's the old Catholic Church. They would speak, the priest spoke Latin and nobody knew what they were saying, but whatever the priest told them it was, they believed. And that's what is going on in the evangelical church, and still is. And it's really sad because, Christianity, for anyone who really knows the New Testament, they're just throwing up because it's everything they talk about, everything they do. I mean, to be sitting there where Marjorie Taylor Greene, not her, Boebert, was in a church recently and talking about Biden dying, and they were all cheering in a church. I mean, it's just obscene. It makes a joke of all religion, which is
Jesus is love, right?
Yeah.
Well, and as Jim documents, a lot of the narratives that Mike Flynn is selling, and we have thousands of Christians who are signing petitions against the kind of false prophets and false messaging and profiteering that people like Mike Flynn and Roger Stone are engaging in. So we are very much hoping that this episode in particular is our way to reach across to Trump voters and people who are still perhaps, thinking that he might be their next president, and seeing if we can't get them to start to question what they've been sold, which has been a bill of goods. And my studies of authoritarianism through Ben Giat and Jason Stanley, these guys come to power to hide their corruption. They begin the othering immediately. They use all the fascist tropes, the unreality, the mythic past, victimhood. Now that I have a real understanding of the different narratives that they use to sell this strong man a myth to people, it's very easy to punch through it when I hear it. So that's part of what I'm trying to do. But I feel like your film, more than anything I've seen, particularly in the gentle way that people are given the space to come to their own conclusions, is I think the thing that could actually really bring people back. And again, it's a matter of, like Jim said, that's a brilliant idea, using Ron's clip as a way to kind of like the gateway to get people to come in.
We played in Times Square, except that it wouldn't do the most good there.
Play it in Alabama.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it'd be great to play it in Arkansas, play it in Tennessee, play it in Scottsdale.
But I won't even go into Arizona festivals because that was not happy. But
why don't you tell us what happened?
Well, I just submitted it to a lot of festivals and places where I doubted it would even get considered. But I put in the money because you have to pay to submit. But my feeling was at least the judges will be forced to watch it.
Right. Good point.
You never know. There may be some judge.
We should tell viewers that you won a ton of awards already with this film.
Like 22 awards, yeah.
she says nonchalantly.
Oh yeah, I just won 6 awards. No big deal. Who cares?
Yeah, no, 22. Did you say?
Yeah, we won 22 internationally too.
And
22 international awards.
Some national, some international.
Can you please tell our viewers about the brilliant animation and graphics?
Oh, yes. Well, we all know Chunkle, those of us on Twitter and those of us who don't. His real name is Donnie Gillespie, and he's an artist, and his hobby is animation. It's not his job. He's not an animator.
Wow.
We actually, Chris Gibbs had given this incredible story. He's just a folksy guy who loves to tell these little, parables. It's sort of like salt of the earth parables. And he had told this parable about Trump and termites. And I thought it was so brilliant. And I was trying to raise money during this time. And this was like, okay, well, what if we just put animation to that and use it and we actually did raise some money on that. But I called Chunk and I just said, look, would you mind doing this? Could you do this pro bono? And he did. He was so into it. Yeah. And it was so great that I thought, amazing. And here we are, we can't shoot your normal B-roll stuff. We can't be shooting, documentary footage because we're stuck. We can only we're doing our interviews remotely, and then we're sending crews remotely to follow the people. But it was like, oh, this is going to be a great way to fill in the blanks. And then also, I think I was trying to let people tell their own stories, but I think really my voice comes out the most of the animation. And Chuck, because we were so in tune, and he was actually one of the best. I worked with animators before, and he's certainly the most joyful to work with because
he's remarkable. He's remarkable. He's been remarkable for all the 7 years that I've been involved in this world. A spoiler alert for viewers. The clip she is referencing with the farmer and the termites is what is going to end this episode. So you must continue watching in order to see this brilliant clip.
I would like to point out that the brilliant farmer story is from an Ohio guy, and Ohio is the heart of it all.
Oh my gosh, it sure is. I mean, I'm really Ohio, having read David Pepper's book. Ohio's in bad shape.
Well, I actually did a story earlier. Yeah. I did a story earlier in the show in which, our governor is tied to a $61 million scandal, which is the largest bribery scandal in Ohio history. And yet the vast majority of our citizens carry on like nothing's wrong at all.
Is he part of that school scandal?
The White Hat, the charter schools.
Yeah.
Well, we could go into Ohio politics for a very long time,
and it's really shocking. It's just
shocking. I mean, we have had Roger Stone came here to make sure that gambling stayed in the hands of, shall we say, white men, as opposed to going to Ohio Native Americans.
Right.
We had the medical marijuana scandal in which the law was not followed with the apportionment of growing licenses and dispensary licenses. That was an entire thing. We have the First Energy scandal here in Ohio. We have the gerrymandering scandal in Ohio. We have the fact that our school funding system has been ruled unconstitutional for, I think, about 13 years now, and yet nothing has been done. Yes, Ohio is truly the heart of it all.
We've had David Pepper on multiple times, and I did a big fat Jim Crow 2.0 story for Byline Supplement with David Pepper, where we look at everything that is happening in places like Ohio, comparing it to what was happening in the late 1800s in America, where white supremacists banded together and came up with all kinds of voter suppression laws, and many of them are being rebooted, which is why we called it Jim Crow 2.0. And the disenfranchisement that's going on within the Black community in Ohio is absolutely disgusting. And why it's not front page news, I don't know. But obviously, we all do know we're in a propaganda war. Jim, is there anything else you want to ask Melissa about the film? I have one or two more questions, but I want people to watch it. That's what I want. I want them to watch it. Please watch this movie.
Well, one thing I just wanted to say is I really appreciate you including Dr. Hassan in the movie. He's been an inspiration to me since I started this several years ago.
Yeah, brilliant. He's so brilliant.
Yeah, to me the most sort of misunderstood thing out there in the American public is the trauma from having all of these people that act in ways that they didn't act before, right? They're in a cult.
Yeah.
And for the loved ones of those people, right? That's trauma because that person has been taken from you. Mm-hmm. It's like they're there, but they're not really there. That's right. And one thing I just wanted to hear you talk about is sort of, for the people who are still there, or for the people that have gotten out, what is it like for their loved ones to have them back, right? Because I think it's really important for us to try and get to the people that there are people waiting for you. There are people who want you back.
Exactly. It's very hard when the people that want you back have been dehumanized by everyone around you. I mean, literally dehumanized. And that's what started scaring me, to be honest, in 1987 when I first heard Rush Limbaugh. was the dehumanization. And I was like, and I had people who were ostensibly liberals, and I was in LA then, and they were saying, oh, but he's funny. You got to admit, he's really talented. He's really funny. Like,
Yes,
it's
he
not
is.
funny though. It's not funny. Don't you get it? That's not funny. He's making people into objects, and that has, you know, I mean, look at Tucker Carlson now. He's taken it to a whole new level.
Yes. Ruth Ben-Ghiat calls him the enforcer. And it's interesting that we are on the subject because earlier I introduced one of Ruth's words, rehumanization. And I think what is so beautiful about your film is that you're rehumanizing people. And again, I think that, you know, we talk a lot on the show about empathy. There's a war on kindness. And it's like when you actually show people as they... When you show people how they are, how these are people, and they have, again, the courage to step out of their peer groups and say, I'm not going to stand for this fraud. And I think one of the most moving things for me was watching the young Republican girl on her journey, because clearly she was a superstar in the youth Republican movement and drank the Kool-Aid, even having, family that perished in the Holocaust and seeing all of, the rhetoric around that. But then she came to her own conclusion and she got out.
I think all those people were people who were capable of critical thinking, and I wonder sometimes if people aren't capable of it, or they're capable, but they'd rather fit in. Somebody very close to me recently said something about masks that really surprised me. I won't even go into what it was, but it was basically, I've heard it on Twitter a zillion times from, it's one of the lines. And this is a person who's really smart and a good critical thinker, but surrounded by a lot of people in that, very far right liberals are crazy world. And just, you can see why this cliche was given to him and he passed it on. And it was, you just see how it begins. You want to fit in, and all your friends are saying these things, and all your friends are seeing these things, and you're not the only one not seeing them. What's wrong with you? And that's what's so difficult to break through. And that's the reason I made the film, was specifically to break into that. Can you get somebody to watch this and see that other people really have come? Because I'm sure there's probably very few Trumpers who are not, extreme believing in that Joe Biden is an impersonator or something, that to that extreme. I'm sure there's a lot of people who really had to be lured into it in some way.
Yes. And the people that I know that I want to lure back are some of the kindest, nicest people I know who are being fed toxicity from their pastors.
Exactly.
And if I could bring them back, I would be so happy, because they may not think that Joe Biden's an imposter, but they actually think that he's a bad man. That is like, if you think Joe Biden is a bad man, then, you've been fed a line of bullshit. If you think Trump is your savior, I spent all night going through all my old Trump Russia threads.
Right.
And I've never been more certain that at some point, all that will be left of him is a crater and a can of hairspray. I really believe it. I just, at some point, it all does have to catch up. This cannot go on forever. And I think, again,
I don't know. He's almost 80 years old and he's still free. This last I checked.
It's and just like Bannon, Bannon, one of the most toxic people to ever walk the earth, is, trying to overthrow the Pope, for crying out loud. And he was convicted, and he's still out there doing his radio show and spreading lies.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He gave the middle finger to Congress a year and a half ago. And he's still walking around. We got
nothing.
We got issues with the justice system is a whole other.
We got to keep applying pressure. I'm with you, Jim. I think the pressure we apply does ultimately make a difference. And I also do believe evil people do, in the end, devour each other. I hope it's in time to save our country. High five.
Usually they devour the good people first, though.
That is the problem. That is the problem, right?
Exactly the problem.
They get at each other's, because their only values are power and money. And there's only so much power and money to go around. So once they, get rid of the people who don't care about power and money as much as they do, then suddenly there's only so much, and they do eat each other always.
Okay, well, I want to get to the part of this horror shit show where they're eating each other. High five.
We're getting there.
I think so.
Yeah, it's just taking a little while. All right. So our word phrase of the week this week was cognitive warfare. And cognitive warfare is when, the brain, public opinion becomes the battlefield. What I feel like I'm watching with your film are casualties of cognitive warfare who are now healing from their wounds.
Well,
and part of our problem is our president, our government will not acknowledge the fact that we are experiencing this cognitive warfare, not just from the outside of our country, but also inside our country, from people inside our country.
Right.
How do we overcome that?
Well, I would posit that, a certain term, I feel like Democrats are getting better at messaging, slowly, not fast enough, but the kind of messaging that I tried to do in this documentary, which is soft persuasion, which is not persuasion through lies or propaganda or slogans. It's propaganda. It's persuasion through empathy. And it's something that I've been I've worked in before, and it's I don't know if it has a category or anything, but it's just something I've always done, where I really believe that, the great power of any kind of art is empathy. And when you can identify with somebody, and you're in a dark theater, or you're in a book or whatever, and you start identifying with them, your inner voice starts talking with them, that is really, really powerful. And it can change minds. And I feel like the Democrats have let Republicans define us since like the 80s. They defined us wrongly. I mean, sometimes rightly here and there, but like little details.
Yeah.
Overall, they've totally wrongly defined us. I mean, and Democrats have never really fought back, here and there on certain points, but they've never said, no, this is who we are.
Yeah.
Showed it. And I feel like Hakeem Jeffries gets it. He really gets that, because he doesn't we need to define them. And that's one of the things I wanted to do with this documentary also, is to define what really was happening. Through people, the people who are being lied to and could identify with.
Jim, go ahead. I'm like absolutely just savoring soft persuasion. I'm going to be playing with that. Ooh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I also want to go back to what you said about empathy, because this sort of signature characteristic of the people that have been, unduly influenced is that empathy is out of fashion, right? Like, if you say anything empathetic, if you say anything nice about anyone, other than your very close in group, you are ostracized, right? As people have said, often cruelty is the point.
Right.
So what I'm really interested in is the idea that the empathy is still in there, right? And if you can somehow show that there are still people out there that are willing to connect to that part of you, that might help you kind of, come out of it. I just wanted to see if you got a sense for people, the journey people had in their ability to be empathetic, right? Like, I saw a lot of the people in your movie were very empathetic, which is not characteristic of Trump supporters.
Well, who knew that Joe Walsh was empathetic? I thought he was like, he was just one of the worst. I thought always.
Right.
And I never thought I would call him a friend. And he's a lovely man, and his wife is lovely, and he admits what he did was wrong. He admits that whole
that's hard. That's hard to do. That's hard to do.
It's really hard to do, and people don't give him enough credit. And he still has a lot of points of view that I totally disagree with, but he'll listen. Yeah. And he never used to listen. He never used to listen. His best buddy in Congress was Jim Jordan. I mean, that's who he was, and he's changed that much. And it's not totally his views that have changed, but some of his views of other people have changed. His views about Democrats and about people who believe a certain way, and about Black Lives Matter issues and things like that. Those things have changed. And I think what happens is when you do open up one door, other doors open eventually, because it's hard to compartmentalize to that extent.
Yes. So what I want you to do with our last minute here is I want you to tell viewers and tell just anybody who has been through the trauma of the Trump era why it's very important that they take a look at your film. What is like, the like kind of the high concept message that you'd like to get to people about The Game Is Up?
Well, two things. One is for Democrats and liberal people and independents who don't agree with the whole Trumpian line of thought. I think that I wanted to show that people who voted for Trump are people too. And they're not all crazy racist white supremacists. They're not. A lot, especially in 2016, a lot of them had their own personal reasons, and there was something about Trump that fit that, right? Like Chris Gibbs, the farmer. He's a Republican. He's a traditional Republican. He likes to be a party guy, but he's like, well, you know what? He's going to do the right thing for farmers. And, ditto with so many of the other people that voted for him. I mean, he's going to do the right thing for evangelicals. He's going to be tough with David Weissman. He's going to be tough. He's going to be like a tough military guy. He's like, superhero. They all had their one reason for latching onto him. And I think in Dr. Jen Marcia, she is so good at explaining how Trump was a great blank slate for people because he knew how to leave things open. Yes. I'm going to fix it. I'm not going to tell you all the details now, but trust me, I'm going to fix it. And so a lot of people did buy that. And you have to realize that most people don't know lifelong con artists like him. Most people never met them, especially the ones that were on their TV every week for 9 years. Most people are susceptible to that. So give them a break, especially if they're having some doubts now. Give them a little break. See them as human, and don't try to argue with them. Ask them questions. Yes. I found that asking questions just keep asking questions and without a judgment, because eventually they get to the end of the talking points, and then they either get mad at you and walk away, or they do something. But whatever happens, you planted something just by asking the questions, which is really good. And the other thing is, I just wanted people who were in that cult to see that, we still care about them. We still care about them. We don't want them, we don't want them dead. We don't want to, all the things that they say, liberals are coming and they're going to put us in camps. No, of course not. That's not the way we think. The way we think is we would like you to be better to yourself and more true to yourself and realize you're being used. And those are the two, I think, things to come away with.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to get this out to people. This is going to be so fun. And unless you guys have any last thoughts, I would like to have people watch how brilliant a director Melissa is, and what a brilliant artist Chunk is, by ending on the termite clip.
And Marilis Ernst, who edited it, she's brilliant also. And
incredible.
We're so fortunate. So many people gave. We did this film for very little money. Most of it came out of my pocket in the end, but But what was so great about it was the people, everyone who worked on it, most of whom many of whom had never worked on a film before, they just were all heart. They were all hands on. And it was so great to have people care that much.
Let's do it. What do you say?
Great.
You know, let me give you an example of how Trump has proceeded to ravage through the American people. It goes like this. People were frustrated before President Trump. It was like, say you've got termites in your house, okay? You've hired 2, 3 exterminators to come in over the years, and they all have pretty much the same procedures, the same chemicals, but you know, it's still there. It's still bugging you, to coin a phrase. So this new guy comes into town. He's got new white trucks, gold lettering, of course. He claims he's got new procedures, new chemicals, a new process, a new way of doing business. And you know what you do? You say, you know what? I haven't been satisfied with these other vendors. I'm just going to try this new guy. Because, hey,
What do you have to lose?
What have I got to lose? We call him up. He comes roaring up the driveway, jumps out of his truck, walks right up to your front door, throws a Molotov cocktail in, burns your house clean to the ground. He turns, he says, termites are gone, and he hands you a bill. That's what we've got in the United States. Total destruction, and he's handing us the bill just because we thought he had a new idea.
What do you have to lose?
Such a great fucking clip.
That is so good. And Chunk, man, you know.
Although I have to admit,
major props to Chunk.
Brilliant.
I have to admit, I liked the Stormy Daniels / Farmer story he told more. That was
that'll be
good.
the tease why people have to watch your film. Okay,
Exactly.
before we let you go, first we want to thank you so much for your heart and your soul and your talent. And where can people find this film?
You can find it on Amazon Prime. You can rent it for about $4.99, which you'll get it without commercials and beautiful 4K video. You can also watch it for free on Tubi and on YouTube. The YouTube is our distributor's YouTube, Indie Rights. So look for The Game Is Up, IndieRights.com. They are our distributor, and both of those, Tubi and Indie Rights, do have ads in them. So you can but with ads, or you can watch it, rent it for a very small amount of money and watch it without ads. Either one.
If you guys have the $5, rent it on Amazon so she can start to recoup some of the money that she spent producing this very brilliant film. And if you can't, you must see it. No matter what you got to do, you got to see it. Jim, any last words?
No, just thank you for this movie and for everything you do and for, just
thank you guys.
Being like you are. We need more of you. Thank you.
We do. We need so many more of you. All right. Thank you very much. What a show. Episode 60. That's a wrap.